The first explosions tore the sky apart as the human fleet broke through the alien blockade. For weeks, the Xyrran Empire had tightened its grip around the outer colonies, hunting every human transport they could find. When the alarms blared across the station, Captain Xyrran knew this battle would be different. He had no orders to retreat. This time, they were here to strike back. Amid the chaos, a squad of Marines dragged prisoners toward the holding cells. Among them was a green-skinned woman with long red hair and fierce eyes. Her wrists were bound in glowing energy cuffs, and she spat at Xyrran as he passed. The spit landed on his armor, sliding down in a trail of defiance. She did not look afraid. She looked like she wanted to kill him. She was not just any prisoner. The markings on her armor, now dented and blood-stained, told him she was a commander. The Xyrrans feared no one, but here she was, chained and surrounded by humans. Xyrran knew capturing her alive was a rare victory, but her hatred burned hotter than the fires raging outside the station windows. When the station shuddered from another blast, Xyrran's cum crackled with bad news. Reinforcements were coming for the Xyrrans, and fast. The human fleet had bought them minutes at best. If they didn't move the prisoners off station, they would be overrun. Yet as he looked at the green-skinned commander, something in her glare told him she would rather die here than be taken. "Move her to my ship," Xyrran ordered. The Marines hesitated, confused by the direct involvement of their captain. But the order stood. The prisoner snarled, her voice sharp as broken glass, cursing him in her native tongue. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Enough. She saw him as filth, a captor beneath her notice. The corridor to the docking bay was a war zone. Sparks rained from shattered panels, and the distant thud of weapons fire grew louder. Xyrran kept the prisoner close, his hand gripping her arm. She tried to pull away once, twice, then stopped when she realized his strength. She was proud, but even pride could be weighed against survival. A blast tore through the wall ahead, throwing debris into the air. The shockwave knocked them both to the ground. For a moment, all Xyrran could hear was the ringing in his ears. Then he felt her hand clutch his arm. It wasn't for comfort. She was trying to push herself up, but her movements were slowed by the cuffs. Without thinking, he pulled her to her feet and shielded her from falling rubble. The look she gave him was not gratitude. It was confusion. In her world, mercy was weakness. She spat again, missing his face by inches. Yet her eyes lingered on him for a heartbeat longer before she turned away. Xyrran didn't know it yet, but before this war was over, she would owe him more than she could ever repay. The human dropship roared away from the burning station, its hull rattling under enemy fire. Xyrran sat across from the alien commander, her wrists still bound in glowing cuffs. The red emergency lights painted her green skin in harsh shadows. She did not look away from him, her glare unbroken, as if daring him to speak first. While neither said a word, the Marines around them kept their rifles ready, but Xyrran could see they were unsettled. It wasn't just her beauty or her alien armor. It was the way she held herself despite her chains. She was a prisoner in there. Yet somehow she seemed like the one in control. Even sitting still, she radiated command. Outside the narrow window, the wreckage of ships drifted past. The Xyrran reinforcements were closing in fast. Every minute counted, and Xyrran knew the humans were still outnumbered. Yet he kept stealing glances at her, wondering what kind of leader she must be to inspire such loyalty from her kind. She caught him looking once and smiled, but it was the smile of a predator. When the dropship finally docked with his cruiser, the tension only grew. The commander walked off the ramp with her head high, refusing to be pulled along. Xyrran noticed how she studied the ship's corridors, memorizing details. She was planning something. Prisoners like her didn't just sit quietly. He made a mental note to double the guard. In the brig, The cell's energy field cast a cold blue glow over her face. She sat down on the bench, her eyes never leaving him as he stood outside. "Why am I still alive?" she asked in accented Terran common. Her voice was softer than he expected, but the contempt in it was sharp. Jareth didn't answer immediately. He knew her type. Every word was a weapon. "Because dead enemies can't talk," he replied. Her lips curled slightly, almost a smirk. She leaned back, her gaze drifting over the cell walls. "And what makes you think I'll tell you anything?" she said. Jareth stepped closer, the light from the energy field reflecting in his eyes. "Because one day you'll have no choice," he said. She laughed once, low and mocking, then looked away. Hours later, the ship trembled as it entered hyperspace. Jareth walked the silent corridors, his thoughts returning to the prisoner. Reports on her identity confirmed what he suspected. She was Commander Vera of the Xyrran Fourth Fleet, known for her ruthlessness and unmatched skill in battle. Capturing her alive was not just a victory. It was a weapon in itself. That night, an alert pulled him from his quarters. The ship had been hit by a sudden ambush during a supply drop. Damage reports came in fast. Several decks were breached, and fires were spreading. But the real problem was worse. The brig's security systems had been disabled by the shockwave. When Jareth arrived, he found the cell open, and Vera still inside. She was standing in the doorway, her cuff still glowing. Around her lay two unconscious guards, their weapons kicked far out of reach. She hadn't run. She hadn't even moved past the threshold. For a moment, they stared at each other, the sounds of alarms echoing around them. Then she spoke, her voice calm but edged. "Your ship is dying. I can save it," she said. Jareth narrowed his eyes. "And why would you?" he asked. She tilted her head slightly, a lock of red hair falling across her cheek. "Because if this ship goes down, I go down with it. And I'm not ready to die, not yet," she said. Her tone was matter-of-fact, not pleading. It was the same tone a soldier used when stating a battlefield reality. He hesitated only a second before stepping aside. The Marines behind him shifted, unsure whether to stop her. But Jareth gave no order to fire. Vera walked past him with the confidence of someone who had already decided her next move. Whatever happened next, he knew this uneasy alliance was about to be tested in fire. The corridor shook violently as another blast hit the ship. Vera didn't flinch, moving quickly toward the engineering deck. Jareth followed close behind, his sidearm ready. The Marines exchanged uneasy glances as they escorted them. None of them liked the idea of letting the enemy commander anywhere near critical systems, but orders were orders. For now, she was their only hope. When they reached the main reactor chamber, the damage was clear. Sparks rained from shattered conduits, and smoke filled the air. A coolant line had ruptured, flooding part of the deck in white mist. Engineers worked frantically to stabilize the core, their voices sharp with urgency. Vera stepped forward, scanning the chaos with a calm, calculating gaze. "This is primitive," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "But it will work." She knelt beside a damaged control panel, her fingers dancing over the alien. "Technology." The humans stared, confused. Jareth stepped closer, watching her movements. She wasn't just repairing the damage. She was modifying the system. He recognized the precision of someone who had done this under fire before. A nearby Marine raised his weapon slightly. "Captain, she could be sabotaging us," he said. Jareth didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed locked on her. Every instinct told him she was dangerous, but there was something else too. She was working too fast for sabotage to be the goal. When the reactor's warning lights dimmed, he made his decision. "She's helping us," he said. The Marine lowered his weapon reluctantly, still glaring at her. Vera didn't look up. "If I wanted your ship destroyed, it would already be dust," she said. Her tone was sharp, but it carried no arrogance, only truth. Jareth realized then that her survival was tied to theirs more closely than he had thought. Minutes later, the reactor stabilized. The crew let out relieved breaths, but the battle was far from over. The enemy fleet was still pursuing them, and the damage to the outer hull meant they couldn't jump to hyperspace again without risking collapse. Jareth turned to Vera, who was already on her feet, wiping coolant residue from her hands. "You know their tactics," he said. "Tell me what they'll do next." Her eyes narrowed, studying him. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Jareth met her gaze without blinking. "Then you'll die along with us," he replied. The silence between them stretched, filled with the distant sounds of the ship's systems straining to hold together. Finally, she spoke. "They'll split their forces to flank you, driving you toward a trap. If you change course now, you can avoid it. But you'll need to risk the asteroid field ahead," she said. The crew exchanged nervous looks. Flying through an asteroid field at this speed was suicide, but so was waiting for the enemy to close in. Jareth didn't hesitate. "Helm, plot a course for the field," he ordered. The officer at the controls swallowed hard but obeyed. Vera turned toward the viewing port, her expression unreadable. She had given them a path, but not without danger. It was a move that could save them or destroy them faster than the enemy ever could. As the cruiser dove toward the swirling mass of rock and ice, the hull groaned under the strain. Alarms blared as debris scraped against the shields. The crew worked in tense silence, every impact threatening to breach their defenses. Jareth stood at the command console, feeling the weight of every life on board pressing on his shoulders. Vera remained at his side, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "You steer like a child," she muttered. He gave her a sharp look, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she pointed to a gap in the asteroid cluster. "There, take it now or you'll miss the window," she said. He relayed the command without question, and the ship veered sharply into the narrow opening. Asterisk. The cruiser darted through the asteroid field with desperate precision. Every second brought another massive rock spinning past the viewports, close enough to scrape the hull. The crew held their breath with each near miss. Shields flashed under the strain, and warning klaxons echoed across the bridge. The enemy ships still followed, but the asteroids made their pursuit far more dangerous. Vera stood beside Jareth, giving rapid instructions in a calm, commanding tone. Her knowledge of the field's shifting patterns was uncanny. She predicted each large collision before the sensors did. The helm crew followed her orders without question, their trust growing despite her alien origin. Jareth noticed the change in their eyes. Fear was slowly being replaced with grudging respect. The ship banked hard to avoid a massive tumbling boulder. The sudden maneuver threw several crew members off balance. Jareth caught himself on the console, his gaze flicking to Vera. She hadn't moved an inch. Her feet were planted firmly, her eyes locked on the display. She looked as if she was exactly where she belonged, in control of the chaos around her. A warning sounded from the tactical officer. "Enemy ships splitting formation," he reported. "Two are trying to cut us off at the far end of the field." Vera's lips curved in a faint smile. "Just as I said," she murmured. Jareth turned to her. "Then how do we stop them?" he asked. Her answer came quickly. "By making them think we've already lost," she said. Her plan was bold and dangerous. She ordered the ship to power down all non-essential systems and allow the cruiser to drift between two massive asteroids. The idea was to vanish from enemy sensors long enough for them to overshoot their trap. Jareth hesitated. One mistake and they would be crushed between the rocks. But the alternative was certain death. The crew executed the plan with tense precision. Lights dimmed across the bridge, leaving only the faint glow of the displays. The hum of the engines faded to silence. Outside, jagged walls of rock drifted slowly, casting long shadows over the hull. Everyone waited, barely breathing. Seconds felt like hours as they floated in the asteroid graveyard. Suddenly, the sensor display lit up. Enemy ships streaked past. Their hiding place, their weapons firing blindly into empty space ahead. The trap had failed. Jareth gave the order to restart the engines. The cruisers surged forward, slipping out from behind the asteroid cover. Cheers broke out among the crew. But Vera didn't join them. Her gaze was still on the tactical screen. "They'll be back," she said flatly. "You bought time, not safety." Jareth knew she was right. The enemy wouldn't give up so easily. But for now, they had an opening. He ordered the helm to head toward the nearest friendly outpost. The ship accelerated, weaving through the last stretch of the asteroid field. The tension in the air slowly shifted into cautious relief. In the quiet that followed, Jareth found himself alone with Vera. In the observation deck, the stars stretched out before them, cold and endless. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her posture regal despite the restraints still on her wrists. "You saved my crew," he said. Her expression didn't change. "I saved myself," she replied. Yet there was something in her voice, a subtle shift he couldn't quite place. It wasn't gratitude, but it wasn't pure hostility either. She was beginning to see him as more than just her captor. Whether she liked it or not, they were bound together by survival now. And in the deep silence of space, survival was the only currency that mattered. The cruiser's hull bore fresh scars from the asteroid run, and engineering crews worked non-stop to keep systems functional. Jareth moved through the corridors, checking on repairs. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a new energy among the crew. They had survived something impossible, and part of that victory belonged to the alien commander still in custody. Vera was in the medical bay, having a deep gash on her shoulder treated. She didn't flinch as the medic worked, her sharp eyes following Jareth as he entered. "Your ship is falling apart," she said without preamble. "If the enemy finds us now, you won't last 10 minutes. Jareth leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Then you'd better hope they don't," he replied. The medic finished and left, clearly relieved to be away from the tension between them. Jareth stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've been in more battles than I can count. You know what they'll send next. Tell me." Vera tilted her head slightly. "And why would I give you an advantage over my own people?" she asked. He didn't look away. "Because the moment they catch us, they'll kill you too," he said. For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. Her gaze shifted to the floor, her jaw tightening. When she finally spoke, her tone was cool, but steady. "They'll send hunters, small fast ships. They won't attack head-on. They'll disable your engines first, then board." Jareth absorbed the information, already thinking through countermeasures. Her eyes flicked back to him, gauging his reaction. On the bridge, the warning came sooner than expected. Sensors detected multiple small signatures approaching at high speed. The crew scrambled to battle stations. Vera appeared at Jareth's side, her presence unspoken, but somehow necessary. "They'll come in waves," she said. "Hit the first group hard before the second arrives, or you'll be overwhelmed." Her voice carried no hesitation. The first hunter ships broke through the darkness, weaving unpredictably. The cruiser's gunners tracked them, firing bursts of plasma. One enemy craft exploded in a flash, but two more closed in, spraying the hull with disabling rounds. The lights flickered as systems took the hit. Jareth barked orders, his voice sharp over the chaos. Vera gripped the back of his chair, eyes fixed on the tactical display. A sudden lurch threw several crew members to the deck. One of the hunters had latched onto the hull, attempting to breach. "Boarders incoming," shouted a Marine. Vera didn't wait for permission. She grabbed a rifle from the nearest weapons rack and moved toward the corridor. Jareth caught up to her, his own weapon ready. "You're still my prisoner," he said. "Then keep up, she replied. The firefight in the lower deck was brutal. Xyrran boarders moved with inhuman speed, their armor glinting in the emergency lights. Vera fought like a storm, every shot precise, every movement efficient. Jareth found himself matching her rhythm, covering her flank without thinking. They moved together as if they had fought side by side for years. When the last boarder fell, the deck was littered with scorch marks and debris. Vera lowered her weapon, breathing steadily. Jareth looked at her, and for the first time she didn't meet his gaze with hostility. There was no smile, no mocking remark. Only the silent acknowledgement of shared survival in the heat of battle. Back on the bridge, the crew reported the remaining hunters retreating. The ship had taken more damage, but they were still flying. Vera stood beside Jareth as he gave orders to assess the extent of the hull breaches. Neither of them spoke for a moment. In the quiet hum of the bridge, they both understood that the line between captor and ally had already begun to blur. Asterisk. The aftermath of the hunter attack left the cruiser limping through space. Entire sections of the ship had been sealed off due to hull breaches, and the engineering team worked around the clock to keep the core stable. Jareth walked the damaged corridors, his mind heavy with the decisions ahead. Supplies were running low, and medical resources were stretched to their limit. Vera spent her time between the brig and the repair decks, no longer under heavy guard, but still watched by wary eyes. She offered advice on reinforcing the hull against further boarding attempts, her suggestions precise and effective. Some crew members began speaking to her without the same hostility they once carried. Others still saw her as nothing more than a dangerous enemy in disguise. On the bridge, a priority transmission came through. The nearest human outpost had been destroyed. The signal contained only fragments of distress calls and static. Jareth felt a cold weight settle in his chest. If the enemy had taken the outpost, their path forward was blocked. Vera stood at the edge of the bridge, her arms crossed, studying the grim faces around her. They'll be setting traps now, she said. If you fly straight into their territory, you'll be surrounded before you know it. Jareth turned to her. Then tell me another way, he said. She hesitated, then stepped forward. There's a neutral system nearby, when your people won't risk entering. My people use it for covert movement. I can guide you through it, she said. The idea was risky. Neutral in name only, the system was filled with shifting gravity wells, pirate strongholds, and ancient minefields left from wars long past. But it was also a place where the Xyrran fleet rarely committed large forces. Jareth weighed the choice. The crew was watching him, waiting for an order that could mean life or death. He finally nodded. Plot the course, he said. The navigator looked uncertain, but Vera stepped in, pointing to the coordinates on the star chart. Her voice was steady, her instructions detailed. It was clear she had traveled this route before, and more than once. Jareth noticed that for the first time, she was speaking as if she was already part of the crew. As they approached the edge of the neutral system, the sensors lit up with unknown contacts. Small craft darted in and out of the shadows, their movements erratic. The crew braced for confrontation, but Vera raised a hand. These aren't military, they're scavengers. Let me speak to them, she said. Jareth frowned, but gave her the comm channel. Her voice over the broadcast was firm yet measured, speaking in a language most of the crew didn't understand. The scavenger ships shifted position, no longer moving aggressively. Minutes later, they faded into the debris fields, leaving the cruiser unchallenged. The crew stared in quiet disbelief. Sometimes a fight isn't worth the price, she said simply. The deeper they went into the system, the stranger the journey became. Gravity anomalies twisted the stars outside the viewports, and old wrecks drifted silently through the dark. Vera guided them with uncanny precision, warning of dangers before the sensors picked them up. Jareth found himself relying on her instincts. Without question, a trust that would have been unthinkable days ago. Late in the voyage, a sudden alarm shattered the quiet. The minefield ahead had shifted, its deadly pattern closing around them. The crew scrambled to adjust course, but there was no safe path left on the charts. Vera stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "I can get us through," she said, "but you'll have to follow my instructions exactly." Jareth met her gaze, and for the first time, there was no doubt in his voice when he said, "Then lead the way." The minefield loomed ahead like a wall of silent death. Ancient warheads drifted among the debris, each one still deadly enough to rip the cruiser apart. The ship's sensors painted the display with hundreds of red markers. The crew looked to Jareth for an order, but his eyes were already on Vera. She stepped forward, calm in the face of the danger ahead. "Power down non-essential systems," she instructed. "The mines are sensitive to energy output. Keep the ship as quiet as possible." The bridge crew moved quickly, dimming lights and shutting down secondary circuits. The familiar hum of the engines softened into a low vibration. Every movement felt slower, more deliberate, as if the whole ship was holding its breath. Vera stood beside the helm, guiding the pilot through narrow gaps in the mine clusters. Her directions were precise, her voice steady even as warning alarms chirped whenever a mine drifted too close. Jareth watched her work, noting how she studied the field like a map she had walked 100 times before. Every command she gave carried the weight of experience. The tension on the bridge was suffocating. One wrong move would mean instant destruction. The pilot's knuckles were white on the controls, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Vera leaned closer, pointing to a faint shadow on the display. "Shift 2 degrees starboard now," she said. The cruiser slid past a mine that would have ended them all. Halfway through, a tremor shook the ship. A drifting piece of debris had clipped the hull, sending vibrations through the frame. The crew froze, waiting for the chain reaction that would spell their end. But the mine stayed still, their sensors untriggered. Vera allowed herself the smallest exhale before resuming her instructions. No one spoke unless it was to confirm her orders. Jareth moved to stand behind her, his presence solid and unshaken. "How many times have you done this?" he asked quietly. "Enough to know the mines aren't your only problem," she replied. Her gaze flicked to the far edge of the display. A faint signal blinked there, too steady to be drifting debris. "We're being watched," she said. The signal grew stronger as they moved closer to the heart of the field. Jareth recognized the signature now. It was a Xyrran scout ship, holding position just outside the mine perimeter. "They're waiting for us to make a mistake," he said. Vera's eyes narrowed. "Then we won't give them one," she replied. The cruiser crept onward, weaving through the final stretch of mines. The scout ship shadowed their progress, always just out of weapons range. The crew worked in silence, every second stretching into an eternity. Vera's voice never wavered, guiding them with the same controlled confidence she had shown from the start. Jareth could see the trust in his crew's eyes now, not just for him but for her. Finally, the last cluster of mines fell behind them. The ship's sensors showed open space ahead, but the shadow of the Xyrran scouts still lingered. Jareth gave the order to bring systems back online. The hum of full power returned, and the cruiser surged forward into safer territory. On the display, the scout ship turned away, fading into the darkness. The crew erupted in quiet cheers, but Jareth's gaze stayed on Vera. "You could have let us die back there," he said. She met his eyes, her expression unreadable. "So could you," she replied. For a moment, they stood in silence, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Whatever battles lay ahead, they were no longer just captor and prisoner. They were survivors who had walked through death together and lived to see another star. The cruiser emerged from the neutral system battered but intact. The crew moved with a sense of grim relief, tending to repairs and checking systems. For The first time in days, there was no immediate threat on the sensors. Yet Jareth knew the quiet wouldn't last. The Xyrran fleet would not forget the loss of their prized commander, and they would come hunting. Vera stood at the observation deck, her gaze fixed on the endless stars. She no longer wore the cuffs, though her freedom was still limited. The crew had grown used to her presence, some even exchanging words with her without hostility. She had earned her place through action, not by asking for it. In war, that was worth more than loyalty bought by rank. A sudden alert broke the calm. A massive energy signature appeared on the long-range scans. It was a Xyrran warship, far larger than anything the cruiser could match. The crew's relief evaporated in seconds. Jareth stepped onto the bridge, reading the incoming data. The warship was closing fast, and it was broadcasting a single message. It demanded the immediate return of Commander Vera. The crew turned to him, waiting for his decision. Vera entered the bridge, her expression calm. "If you give me to them, they'll let you go," she said. Her tone carried no fear, only certainty. Jareth stared at her. "And they'll execute you the moment you're back on their ship," he said. She tilted her head slightly. "That's not your concern," she replied. "It is now," he said. His voice carried the weight of every battle they had fought together. The bridge fell silent. Vera's eyes met his, and for a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped closer, her voice lowering. "If you try to fight them, you'll die. All of you. There's only one way out of this," she said. Her plan was audacious. She proposed using the cruiser's damaged state as bait, making it look like the ship was surrendering. Once the Xyrran warship closed in, they would trigger an overload in the minefield navigation core they had salvaged earlier. The resulting energy pulse would disable the enemy's systems, just long enough for the cruiser to escape at full burn. It was a gamble with no room for error. Jareth listened, weighing the risks. The crew waited for his answer. Finally, he nodded. "Do it," he said. Vera moved to the engineering station, working alongside the crew she had once called enemies. Her hands moved quickly, her instructions clear. The trust between them was no longer fragile. It was a weapon in itself. The Xyrran warship loomed on the main display, a shadow that blotted out the stars. The cruiser's engines dimmed, drifting forward as if too damaged to resist. The warship closed in, its weapons locked but not firing. On the bridge, every second stretched thin. Jareth watched the range counter tick down. Vera's voice came over the comm. "Ready," she said. "Now," he ordered. The minefield core released its stored energy in a blinding pulse. Lights across the enemy warship flickered and died. For a heartbeat, the giant vessel was adrift. The cruiser's engines roared to life, surging away with every scrap of power they had left. The crew held their breath until the warship's image faded from the tactical display. When it was over, the bridge erupted in relieved shouts. Jareth turned to see Vera step onto the deck, her expression unreadable. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "You could have traded me for your safety," she said. He shook his head. "We don't leave our own behind," he replied. For the first time, her eyes softened. She extended her hand, a gesture that carried more weight than any treaty. "Then perhaps I am yours now," she said. Jareth clasped her hand, the unspoken agreement sealed. They were no longer captor and prisoner, no longer enemies bound by circumstance. They were allies who had survived the impossible together, and the war would never see them the same way again.